Good afternoon. It's Lindy Chapman here in blustery Boston. I don't know if you can see the weather behind me, but it is snowing and it is cold. But I'm excited to be here because, as I've said before, Fridays are my absolute favorite days on ReloTalk. And again, I'm Lindy Chapman, CEO of DOS Social Agents and host of ReloTalk. I wanted to come on here before I introduce my next guest to just say I will soon be transitioning my LinkedIn Live interviews to focus more on the real estate industry. But relocation and real estate go hand in hand. Whether you're moving across town or across the globe, finding home involves more than just the physical logistics of a move. It's an emotional process that often involves recreating your social and your professional connections as well as your career. And here's the challenge. Technology is disrupting both the relocation and real estate industries, not to mention the changes that COVID has brought, including the opportunity to work from home, which is why I'm super excited to be inviting to have Rob Mizell. I just said it right and then I said it wrong. Sorry, Rob, on the show today, because as we become more high tech, it's essential not to lose the human element, the human touch. It's essential whether you are the relocation or HR professional, the real estate agent, the recruiter, the employer. We must recognize and address the human side, especially right now when things are so upside down. I loved an article written recently by Kerwin Guillermo of HP, who is a true leader when it comes to global mobility, and in this article, he reminded companies and relocation providers that we are responsible for moving people's hopes and dreams. And again, that's one of the reasons I'm excited about today's guest. He has worked and lived and traveled around the world, speaks 5 languages, including Spanish, Portuguese, Japanese, and conversational Chinese. He is a professional, and his real-world experiences have inspired his career to bridge the gap between global mobility and cross-cultural industries by offering cross-cultural training and consulting solutions to organizations, global teams, and individuals. So, without further ado, I'm going to bring on Robert right now. Hey, Robert.
Hey there, Lindy. Thanks
Welcome.
So much for thanks for having me on the show. I have a lot of respect for you and what you do, and that was a phenomenally nice intro. Thank you.
I always get a little lost sometimes. I forget where I'm going, but I usually get there eventually. But
we got there.
But really appreciate you being here today. I've enjoyed I think the first time I saw you was on Ben Cross's show, and then we were able to talk after that. And I'm excited. I love seeing how you've used your love of adventure and your travel and just your love of people, I think, to address some issues in the relocation industry that definitely need to be addressed. So,
thanks. Yeah.
So let me just start by welcoming everybody that's here. Really appreciate you being here, and always appreciate people stopping by and taking time out of your Friday. Be sure to connect with Rob if you've not. Victoria McCullough is in the background. If you've not connected with her, definitely get connected with Victoria and drop a note and let us know where you are calling in from. I wanted to point out that today is powered by Pivot. If you've not connected with Lynn Greenberg, and if you're not familiar with her app, Pivot, that helps people reduce the churn of relocation. And again, as somebody that's been the relocation client almost a dozen times, I think it provides a really incredible service and adds a lot to the relocation process. But so Rob, I'm fascinated by, because you're pretty young. I want to ask you how young you are. You're definitely younger than I am, but just fascinated by the way you've traveled. You've seen the world. You mentioned on your website you've traveled to 50 countries, I think 38 states, and most of the continents.
Yeah, and I know you wanted to know how young I am.
You don't have to say.
Turning 8 year. That's not true. Don't worry about that. I'm in my early 30s. Yeah, I love travel. I've just made it a real point to make it a strong piece of my life because I've just found so much value in it.
Yeah. Well, and you've been to more countries than you've been states.
Crazy, right?
Yeah. When did your love for travel and languages? I mean, you speak 5 languages, including English. When did your love for travel and language begin?
You know, that's a great question, Lindy. It sort of spurred from just the beginnings of when I started to think as a teenager about the typical vacations a lot of Americans do, like go to Cancun, Mexico, go to a lot of folks go just to neighboring countries like Canada. So I did those things, and I really enjoyed just gaining a new perspective. And from there, it sort of started to branch out more and more. And then all of a sudden, there was one meaningful sort of game-changing event that I can discuss. I think the sort of explosion happened when I was planning to go on a solo Euro trip with a friend, and turns out that it didn't work out on his end, and I had to make a choice.
Mm.
And I was nervous. I was scared. I thought that, that would probably be ridiculous, for me to go travel Europe alone. I shouldn't do that. I'm not going to know anyone. I'm not going to have any fun. I'm not gonna know what to do. So, I did what any logical person would do, and I decided, like, I'm gonna go, and I went, and that changed my life.
Yeah.
And just to pull in the languages, as I started going to different places, and as you mentioned before, sort of my interest in people, I realized that by learning the native language of where I was able to connect on a much different level with folks, like a deeper, more genuine, respected level.
Yeah. And I like to know what's going on around me. So when I lived in Germany and Vienna, I was determined to learn the language just because I didn't like knowing what people were not knowing what people were saying.
Exactly.
So, and I love that because one of the things that I really focus on is the relocation spouse, the partner, and really helping people see that are the relocation clients, see it as an adventure, seeing it as an opportunity to recreate yourself, but also to help the global mobility professionals understand just how challenging that can be to have everything ripped out from under you. I mean, I moved to Vienna right after college, and I've always wondered, why was that move not as hard as even just some of the moves that I did cross country? It was because I was in control of that move. Right? It was my choice. I had a purpose when I arrived. I had a tribe of people that I was working with. I had goals. I had, it was my choice. And so when things went wrong, it was my choice. And I could remember that. And I think that's a big difference and a helpful one, I think, for the relocation industry to understand. But I also think it's really important for those of us who do pick up and move to support a spouse's career that we understand what a rich experience that is, and that if we can adapt to the culture and understand what we need to do in order to do that, how rich of an experience it will be to recreate yourself.
I agree, Lindy, and I think that, as you said, just keeping in mind the entire picture is so important, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of times, someone gets a work assignment, they move, the spouse comes along, but the spouse doesn't necessarily know what they're going to do when they get there, or doesn't necessarily have work lined up, or can even work and doesn't have a social network. There's so many issues that need to be addressed for the entire family when a move happens. Because as Kerwin said, right, it's just such an important thing when you have this move. We're moving people's hopes and dreams. Right.
And Kerwin's on here today. So I wanted to say hello to him. And I hope he heard my shout out to him in my introduction. Victoria Messer is on here, and she's a relocation professional in Berlin. And she says, I've had so many families where the relocating spouse is afraid to even go outside. I try to encourage them to go out and explore. And that is the job of the relocation professional, to understand that, right? Or in my case, I always talk about the real estate agent. That's really your job as somebody's first friend, to help them understand that this is an adventure and help them see all the great things about your city. Because I think a lot of times with cross-cultural training, even, I know when I went to Europe, it was a lot of like how hard it was going to be. I'd already done it, so I was excited, but I remember a lot of the other Americans that I were with, they were focused more on the hard than on the opportunity.
That's so true. And as Victoria said, just in terms of like, there's these nerves to even go out and do anything. And that's why I think there's such value in services like Lynn Greenberg's, like working with Pivot, helps people have a social network, right? Because a lot of times people are scared and confined because they don't maybe understand the culture and know how to navigate, but also because they don't have that social network. They don't have like friends or family there to turn to. They don't know what they should be doing.
And it's so helpful. Our relocation provider, when we moved to Germany, had a cookout like in September, and we were able to meet other people that had come at the same time we were, that were in different groups. So it wasn't just people with my husband's company or people who had children my friends' ages, but really to get to meet other people. And then the other thing that's really great is to be able to meet people that have gone before you, that have been there for a year, and to hear from them and to learn from their experiences, and for them, because they're always eager to help and to share. But that's really helpful because the move doesn't end when that last box arrives. It just really is starting at
It
that
just
point.
begins. That's
Yeah,
when it's
it really
beginning.
does.
Yeah.
So I know you've lived a lot of places. What's the favorite city where you've ever lived?
Ooh, Lindy, that's a tough one. But if I have to answer it,
You do.
okay. I'd say probably Tokyo.
Yeah, I thought you might say that. And you were there for several years, right?
Yeah, I spent 3 years of my life there.
And totally different culture.
Totally different.
What did you love about it?
Everything, anything. It was just so amazing and intricately different than what I had known prior. So
Right.
I just had never experienced a place that was so immaculately clean, insanely convenient, and just ridiculously kind. I guess would be the
Yeah.
three kind of statements I would make right off the bat.
Hmm. That's interesting. It's one place I've not been. I've been close to it, but never been to Japan. But so, how did you create your social circle? I know you were there teaching English. How did you create a social circle? Is it mostly other expats, or was it locals, or was it a combination?
This is a great question. So yes, there were some like expats. Also create a social circle by, so with some of my coworkers when I would go out, for snacks or for drinks with some of the expats and some of the Japanese um, folks there that I worked with. But this next one might surprise you, but this has sort of been a theme throughout my life. And the biggest impact that I had that was made on my social circle was me just getting out there
Yeah.
and talking to people like anywhere and everywhere, because I'm a social being. And if I'm at a bar and I'm next to you, I'm probably starting to talk to you.
You're not very shy.
No,
So, and you had your caffeine today.
I had my
Vic-
caffeine today.
Victoria asked how many languages you speak.
5, Victoria.
That's amazing. And did you know Japanese before you went over there, or did you learn it?
That's right. So the impetus behind going to Japan really was like, well, first off, I traveled there and I was just stunned. This place is amazing. It's so different. It's so wild. It's so confusing. I need to know more. And I just felt like as a traveler, I could get a certain perspective, but as an expat living and working there, I could really gain a different perspective on it. And I really wanted to have that. But I wanted the challenge of going to a new place and knowing practically nothing. And I wanted the challenge of going to a new spot where I didn't know the language and changing that. And I
Yeah.
wanted the challenge of going to a new spot where I didn't understand the culture and
Yeah.
changing that.
We've got people here from Dubai and Singapore, Nashville, Amsterdam, England. So I'd love for you to write
Oh,
in the
wow.
comments and let us know exactly like your favorite city. Where have you loved living? And if you have any questions for Robert, please put them in the comments. Would love for you to ask them. Again, he's a cross-cultural trainer. We're going to talk a little bit more about that, changes in the relocation industry. Feel free to put your questions down there, along with your favorite city you've ever lived. And be sure to connect with other people on the call, because that to me is one of the most favorite things about LinkedIn Live. In fact, yesterday my friend Fanny Dunnigan was doing a LinkedIn Live, and I was on there, and I got so many great connection requests from people that I hadn't met, and so I think this is a great way for people that are in the relocation industry or that are clients to connect with other people. We've got to give a shout out to Bob Sager, because I know you've met him recently and have been involved with him. Tell me a little bit about your career transformation, because I know he's been pivotal in my own career as well. But how have you taken these experiences of moving and living abroad and turned them into a career?
Sure. So, and I would also bank on that and build on that. Shout out to Bob Sager. Thank you. He's also been very instrumental in my career in helping just build out the more solo entrepreneurship element of it. But good question, right? How have these experiences I've had sort of pushed me forward into this career? It's been a matter of just really understanding the value in these experiences with travel, languages, and culture, and how much it's impacted me on a personal level, and wanting to be able to deliver that value and share those experiences and share that joy, that passion, that pride, those amazing feelings with with clients.
Yeah. Um, I loved a recent video you did on having strong opinions that leave little room for the gray. And I know that was a big part of my moving and living overseas early on in my life. That really challenged my perspective as an American or as somebody from the South or any of the other things that we kind of get stuck into this one way of thinking. Can you tell me a little bit about that video? And for anybody watching today, if you haven't seen it, go back to Robert's post and look at it because it just made me smile.
Well, thank you, Lindy. And for anyone who's watching it, you're going to see like knuckles up, ready to fight. It's not an aggressive video. It's got nothing to do with boxing. It's just a fun little intro. But the impetus behind that was really, thinking that throughout my life and as I had gone through, just different stages of life, I'd always grown up and been told, you have to decide. You got to A here or B there, and we have to be opinionated and we have to make strong decisions. And I'll preface the rest of my statement by saying, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with being decisive. And I think there's a lot of value to it. But this video is aiming to challenge the belief that we always need to see things in black and white, because I do not believe that that is true. I think there is oftentimes room for gray, especially in certain decisions that might not be so clear cut, it might make more sense to sort of pull in elements from different potential solutions to come up with, combining it with your own unique personality, your mission, to come up with a solution that works for you. So living in Japan really challenged my perspective on like sort of this notion of just it's black or white, because I felt like in Japan, it was more gray. Like people weren't very strongly opinionated on most topics. There was more of a group consensus, is once again my perception. So I really thought that there was an interesting dynamic here going on between black and white and this sort of gray area as it pertains to opinions and decisions.
I think so much of that comes from just getting to know people that have grown up differently than you, that have different experiences. I know for me, I love to surround myself with people that think differently than me. It doesn't change the way I think or my beliefs, but it does temper them, right? It helps me to see things from the other side. And we need more of that. And I think most people are like that. I think we just tend to see these extremes, especially right now. With all the controversy and political stuff going on in the world, but it was a great video. So be sure to check it out and follow Robert on LinkedIn if you haven't already done that. When I graduated from college, and I think I have this nomadic spirit, much like you did. But when I graduated from college, I used Robert Frost's poem in a speech that I gave on the road less traveled, and later I adopted Henry David Thoreau's perspective that we should come home from adventures and perils and discover with new experiences with new experiences and new character, building character. And I've always loved that because he talks about the adventure of relocation or moving or going to a new place, but also the perils, that it's challenging. And so that's kind of shaped my just adventurous spirit. When things are hard, you realize that's just getting you to a better place. Do you have a favorite quote or a book or something, a mantra that has kind of inspired your journey?
The famous Henry Ford once said, "Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right."
That's a good one.
And that has absolutely impacted my journey because I believe in that. I believe that, if you believe it's true, if you believe you can do it, you can do it. If you've got this idea that it's too tough, it takes too much effort, there's no way I could succeed at this. You're right. You're not going to succeed at it because you don't believe in yourself.
Yeah. We have a couple of adventurous souls on here that talked about where they love to live. Naveen says she loves everything about Italy, and she's truly lived all over the world. She's currently in Dubai. She has a Facebook group called Expat Happy Hour or Coffee with an Expat. Expat Happy Hour is Sunday Bean, but Coffee with an Expat, be sure to connect with her. Victoria Messer says she's been to Barcelona.
Wow.
That's one of her favorites. And of course, she's now in Berlin. Francine, who is in Florida, has been in Philadelphia and St. Louis, and that her favorite place is Jacksonville, Florida. And I also love Jacksonville, Francine, because my parents live on Amelia Island, so love to visit there. So love these adventurous spirits and the people that have lived this life of this kind of global nomadic life that we talk about. And I think that's really an important thing in relocation, is to really begin to, or to be able to see that from the perspective of the person that's moving. So how might the relocation industry benefit from your business? You do cross-cultural training. What is that even? What does that mean?
Sure. And so cross-cultural training is really providing an understanding of what culture is as sort of a basis point. This is a word that's talked about a lot of times, but we don't often take the time to really dive into it, hack into it, cut it up, chop it up, analyze it, understand what culture really is. And then going further and understanding how our environment shapes our perspective, right? How our culture sort of shapes our view of the world. And then understanding now, the next level is, are we on a virtual team that's interacting with folks from another region? Are we an employee or a group of employees that is going to move from New York to Tokyo per se? So then applying that understanding of culture, just seeing and understanding how that new group of people views the world, and how can we sort of understand both perspectives and have this cohesive perspective that's all encompassing, and rather than having culture be a stumbling block and a hurdle, as it oftentimes is, how can it be a catalyst for success? How can we use it to create synergy?
Yeah. What are some of the tools and tricks and the ways that you do that?
Yeah. So I like, and this may sound kind of basic, but sometimes some of the most basic ideas are vital. Keeping an open mind, because you'd be so surprised at, like, when we really step back and look at ourselves, are we really open-minded? Are we really always being open-minded?
Yeah.
Because I can say that I've certainly had discussions before, and as you were saying, there's definitely diversity in looking at diverse perspectives, but sometimes someone says something we don't like, or something that, like, kind of rubs us the wrong way, and it grinds on us, right? But then we got to think, why is it grinding on us? Why is it doing that? And if it's not a direct personal attack, which most times it's not, there'd be something with the way we're viewing the world.
Right.
And so, keeping an open mind, understanding that there are going to be perspectives other than your own that are not right or wrong. They're just different.
Yeah. Kelly Harquist just made a comment about how essential it is, and she's been in the relocation. She's been a relocation director, and is now pivoting to take over my business, 180 Relocation. But I think that was the biggest thing for me that I realized is what a big difference it made when our real estate agent, because that was always the boots on the ground. That was who I was always dealing with. Understood that I wasn't, when I moved to Dallas, for example, I wasn't Texan. I wasn't even really American at that point. I was something different outside of her. So she kept trying to fit me in this box and fit me in, when I would talk about schools, certain schools. And so I didn't find out about an IB school, which is where my son was coming from, because she wasn't thinking from my perspective. The same thing with the kind of home I wanted. Instead of looking at, what I could afford or what most people might buy that had 4 children, instead of looking at my situation. 3 were in college. They were all out of state. I don't know anybody. I don't think I'm going to be entertaining. I don't even think I'm going to like Texas, right? And we were, coming from Europe. We just had a different perspective. And I think even in something as simple as that, which it's not simple, it's actually huge, to be able, whether you're the employer and understanding what that employee is going to feel coming into that office, and helping them navigate that, or if you're the relocation provider, working with that client who's moving to a new place for the first time. It's so essential to see from their perspective rather than assuming, what they say about that, but assuming from your own worldview.
That's so important, Lindy. I completely agree, whether it's dealing with real estate, cross-cultural training, or whatever issue, it ties into that larger sort of concept of seek first to understand.
Yeah.
and then talk, right? So trying to really gain a perspective, gain the other person's perspective before throwing on them what we think they need. It's that level of empathy
Right.
and trying to really understand them and feel for the situation they're in.
Yeah, I think empathy is so key. And technology is really, it's interesting because, again, I talk a lot about it in the real estate space. I just gave a presentation last week on how technology is changing the real estate industry, but it's changing everything about the relocation and real estate business. How does this impact the need for better cross-cultural training and understanding that human side of moving? Are you starting to see some ways that some new opportunities that opens up for your training?
Yeah, that's a great question, Lindy. And I actually just recently wrote an article for the Worldwide ERC, and it was published in the September edition about this, about how technology, cross-cultural training is so important now more than ever, even because of all these technological challenges, because we're using technology so much more now, right?
Mhm.
So I do think there's an opportunity because we just, at least for now, and let's see how it goes moving forward, but we're just using technology so much more to connect than we ever had before. And at least in the past, when we used technology less,
Mhm.
we could rely on getting by okay, this person's going to go into the office and interact with their coworkers. They may ultimately somehow get it, hopefully,
Mhm.
at least to some degree. But now with so much, if not the majority of interactions being virtual, we're not face to face with people, and that just proliferates the cultural differences and challenges. So if even brings to light the greater need to have impactful cultural training to really understand through technology these cultural differences and how to leverage them.
And it comes back to empathy, and it comes back to just joining that high tech with the high touch. I know I've recently joined, like I mentioned, Ask DOS. I am CEO of DOS Social Agents. Not to, well, I can promote my business because it's my show, but
Yes,
um,
go for it.
but it's really a perfect combination of a tech brokerage with tech agents working in on the buy and sell side of a home, but also social agents, and recognizing that not everybody's going to want a tech brokerage. And social agents are brand agnostic real estate agents that help connect clients to the right buyers, sellers, renters, to the right real estate agent, the right realtor. But it's that combination of high tech but high touch that I think is so important, because I think technology needs to evolve this industry. I think one thing that 2020 has shown us is that there's too many people in it. Relocation, so many people are out of jobs right now. In real estate, we have 1.4 million realtors and 5 million homes sold. I have an idea it will be even less than that this year, even though it's been a really crazy, busy season of selling homes. It's because there's such low inventory.
Hmm.
And so technology can replace a lot of that. And as somebody that's a client, the cost of our move to Boston this year was astronomical. There was no reason for our company to spend that much money. And so I think it's interesting to wrestle through these things. What can technology do? But what do we still need to have that human touch, that human element, even with an app like Pivot that can kind of, again, it combines both, right? It's technology, but there's the human side of it as well. So
Exactly. That's a huge challenge, as you said, just really finding a way to fuse both technology and the human element. How can they work together, right?
yeah, which is one of the silver linings of 2020. What are some other silver linings that you've seen personally with everything that's happened?
Sure. And I like this topic specifically because I'm all about motivation. Because I really feel like this has been some of the toughest times for anybody and everybody that exists in the world. Who do you know has gone through a pandemic? Nobody, because it hasn't happened in 100 years.
Yeah.
Now, that said, understanding that we're going through this huge challenge, we also have to think about what are the benefits here, right? What can we gain out of this, right? And from this, I would say there's a lot. Um, because people have been put into this really challenging situation, I believe that people have been forced to be more creative and think in more innovative ways, and that we are starting to see a lot more disruption, not only in the relocation industry, but just in general, because people on a business level are rethinking their businesses. What is essential from a relocation perspective? Do we really need to be sending people here? Should we do this we need to be doing that every month? Oh, maybe we'll send them once a year.
Mm.
But people are also just having a time, I think, to reevaluate their own beliefs and their own values, and think about what's important to them, make whatever changes they might find relevant based on this new thinking, and really move forward that way. And I would say that some of the most challenging times in history have brought about some of the greatest innovation.
It's so true. It's so true. Some of the hardest things that you do in life are the ones that create the results that you just never expected, and the growth that's needed. So it's interesting. It's hard. It's hard, and it's important to have that empathy to be able to relate to the people in your workplace that are struggling, or your clients that are struggling, or your coworker that got let go. It's there are definitely some hard things, but being
Absolutely.
able to find those silver linings is it's so essential. Um, what about for college students? I have 4 kids. One's still in college in New York, actually. So hopefully you and I will meet at some point when I'm up there visiting him.
Yeah.
But I have 3 kids that are post college. They're working. Thankfully, they all have jobs. But what's some best mobility advice or career advice you might have for someone who's fairly new out of college and trying to figure out what they want to do next?
That's a really good one. And I'll say here that, you know, first off, to not put so much pressure on yourself, right? I remember my dad telling me when he graduated, at his graduation speech, the person talking said something along the lines of, "I'm here standing in front of you today to let you know that 97% of you will go on to do something that has absolutely nothing to do with what you studied." The point here is that some people will go on to study, to work in the field that they studied in, and others won't. And choice A is okay, and choice B is okay. And so not putting so much pressure on ourselves to figure things out immediately. And the
Mhm.
second piece of advice that I would like to give is to really think about your passions, your interests, your hobbies. And as we talk about the black and white and gray, there are differing perspectives on this. Some people will tell you, leave it as a hobby, because if you start doing it as a career, you're going to hate it. I'm not of that opinion. I'm of the opinion that if it's something that interests you and you're genuinely passionate, you can sense the person's energy on the topic, you're going to succeed with it. To some degree, you're going to find your way. So follow your interests, your passions, and go after a career that motivates you to make great changes in this world, and that is rewarding to you, that is satisfying to you. That
Mm.
at the end of the day, you go home and you say, "Yeah, I feel good about what I just did. I feel good about what I'm doing in this world."
Yeah. And COVID's definitely been a great reset, right? If there's any other time where you could, like, say, have an excuse to start over, it's kind of like moving to a new city. My husband always would ask me, "Who's Lindy going to be this move?" And I think COVID kind of gives you that chance, right? To
Right.
rethink, what do you want to do? How do you want to do this? Or if you're able to work from home, where do you want to live? I know I have a couple of kids that are, they've got that option right now until August. And what does that look like? And are you willing to think outside the box and be a little adventurous and seize that opportunity? Um, let's talk a little bit. I want to hear a little bit about your book. I know you're writing a book. I know I've heard a little bit about it, but can you tell us more?
Sure. It's all about transforming through travel. And the impetus behind this is really that, as we've talked a little bit about, I feel like I'm so fortunate to have had these opportunities to just understand the world in person. Obviously pre-COVID times, and just all these amazing experiences I've had, this knowledge I've gained about how travel, languages, and cultures are so vital in coming together for the human understanding and connecting with people and transforming our lives. I feel like it is my duty to share this with the world, to show the world that although many folks may have traditionally thought about travel as, okay, business travel, or okay, pleasure. Okay, actually, there's a third category, which is self-development, growth, change, connection, right? Really a deeper level of travel that folks may not previously have thought about.
Hmm. So, and we've got I think Victoria put up the way to sign up. I know it's Join the Journey. It's a MailChimp address, so um, there may be a better link to join it if there is, or we'll put the link in the comments so anybody can just click directly on that to sign up for it. Because you've got guest contributors as well, correct?
We may. I'm looking into that.
Okay.
But what this link will allow people to do is to just sign up for weekly updates as a way to hold myself accountable in the progress of this book and make sure I keep my butt moving on it. Every Friday, today will not be an exception. I will be sending out an email on the progress I've done this week on the book and my future plans and what are the next steps.
Yeah. Yeah, good for you. And you've got a website. I've got it listed below that people can go on and follow your blog and see what you're doing. They can go and see what kind of training you offer to companies, to employees, to individuals. So be sure to connect with Rob and find out more about what he does and follow the progress of his book and hold him accountable and get him to make more videos because I like the energy that he brings to them. One last question, unless you have anything else to add, or unless anybody in the people that are watching today, which again, I'd love to for you to give us a big applause button and thank Robert for being here with us today. But a shout out. Who's somebody that you've admired, that you followed, that's inspired your journey, whether it's been an author or a speaker or anybody you would want to give a shout out that people in global mobility or that are the global nomads themselves need to follow?
Yeah, this is interesting. And this is not going to be what you expect to hear.
I never have any expectations.
Good. That's the best way to do it. I've started reading this book, and I'm really enjoying it. And I want to tie it for this concluding question. I want to hammer a very important point home. And it's also my shout out. The book is called Atomic Habits by James Clear. I don't know if you've heard about it.
I have heard about it.
Here it is. Okay.
Awesome. I have not read it.
So I would just like to take the time to shout him out for doing a great job on the book and to read you a small paragraph from page 203. It says,
Perfect.
It says this: in our data-driven world, we tend to overvalue numbers and undervalue anything ephemeral, soft, and difficult to quantify. We mistakenly think the factors we can measure are the only factors that exist. But just because you can measure something doesn't mean it's the most important thing. And just because you can't measure something doesn't mean it's not important at all. So, to summarize that, I think it's insanely relevant for the cross-cultural industry, for the relocation industry, in having a better understanding of services like what Pivot provides, a social network, and cross-cultural training. Because while I do think that it is important to track, use statistics, use quantitative metrics, and I think they can be very helpful, the pitfall is to use just one and become obsessed by it, or to just track one and not track the right things that don't tell the full story. But when we put quantitative aside for a moment, there are so many things, cross-cultural training being one of them, that are difficult to quantify. Even the success of a relocation, very difficult to quantify, but they are some of the most important things in this world.
Okay, so you're getting a lot of applause and a lot of like buttons on that one. And I'm right there with you on that one, because this is the message I've been trying to hammer home for 3, 4, 5 years since I got into this industry of you've got to hear from the consumer. You have to hear from the people that you're serving. And we're never at these meetings. This year, I finally had that door open, but it's very difficult. It's like a doctor who's never been a patient, but their practice changes completely once they've been a patient, because they find out everything they didn't think about, right? Until you've been in somebody's shoes, but we see the big problems, or we see the things we think that are problems. So I love that. Okay, so I have to get the book because I've heard a number of people mention it, and you're about the 4th one. So I will definitely check that out. So would love to know who else that resonated with, and if you've got any thoughts on it. But yeah, I think that's so important. And I think that, again, that's what 2020 is giving us. It's a giant reset to go back and look at what we're doing. Again, I go back to my own relocation. I've done 8, 9 corporate relocations as the client. Very helpful to pick the brains of somebody that's done it and find out what worked, what didn't work, what could be done better. What do we need to know that we don't know? So yeah, very interesting. Yeah, I think we're all wrestling with it. And when there are challenges, it's the opportunity to problem solve, and problem solvers make great businesses. So really excited about what you're doing, and the way you can affect change in the industry and within companies. So
thank you.
Yeah. Kerwin says it's admirable how you have harnessed your mobility journey to nurture and care for the audience you serve today. You're an inspiration. Oh, thank you for sharing your story. I think he's talking to you. I hope he's talking to you, because I would agree that I really do appreciate the way. And I think you're an inspiration, I think, to people in the younger generation that have graduated in the last decade from college to look at jobs differently, to look at business differently, right? And to see the opportunity. And I think, the most powerful thing we can do is, in one of my interviews, Alex that I interviewed this week, using the power of her story to have moved to Berlin recently and to be recreating her career. I hope more people will, see the opportunity to do that, because I think that's just such again, 2020 offers that opportunity to do something a little differently.
Well, thank you so much for saying that. Respect you greatly, Lindy, and all the work you're doing. And thank you so much, Kerwin, for saying that. I greatly appreciate your comments.
He's a great cheerleader, don't you? I mean, he's everything I've ever heard about Kerwin from other people that have met him is how he's inspired them in their journey and in their career. So
coming from
such big thanks to Kerwin.
Yeah, coming from such an influential leader in the industry, that means a lot, Kerwin. Thank you.
Yeah. So, well, it's a pleasure to have you on here today. I look forward to following your journey and following the publication of your book. Again, if you're watching today, give Rob a big thumbs up, a big applause button, and be sure to connect with him and get to know him and find out how he might be able to add value to your industry, or maybe just add value to you as an individual in terms of understanding. Again, I go back to know what you don't know, and to do that, sometimes we have to talk with people that have a different perspective or different experience, or that speaks 5 languages. So.
Well, thank you so much, Lindy, for inviting me on to chat today. Thank you so much to everyone in our audience who has chimed in, participated, or even just sat there through this time and listened to me ramble. I appreciate you, all of you.
Yeah, no, it's great. And I have to give a big shout out to Victoria, who is behind the scenes. Again, thanks so much for helping me out. If you are on here and watching today, definitely be sure to connect with Victoria and get to know her. She's one of my Dallas buddies, and has been in the relocation industry for a long time. So I appreciate her being here as always and helping me out behind the scenes.
Thank you, Victoria. We appreciate you.
Yeah. Well, have a good weekend, Rob. I hope it's here in New York than it is in Boston. I don't know.
It's not. It's not. But we will have an amazing weekend anyway. Let's not let outside circumstances influence us.
Absolutely. So, well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate it so much, and I will see you next week.